All right, well, good evening and welcome so much to the very first Simone and Friends online series. I'm so excited to be doing this because it gives me such a wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to amazing people all around the world. And the very first person, the very first amazing woman to kick this off with me is none other than Amanda Betts, who stayed up late for us because it's now daylight saving in New Zealand and is staying up late to be able to chat with us all here tonight on Simone and Friends. So I do a very brief introduction for Amanda, but she has such an extraordinary background. I wanted her to share her background with you herself, but just some of the things that I know from the little that I have or come to understand about Amanda, is that she runs a fundraising initiative called Heartspeak, and she's going to talk about that as well, where she takes clothing, tea towels, cushions, plates, and embellishes and upcycles them, and then sells them online with all the proceeds going to help at-risk women and youth. And of course, every unique Heartspeak piece actually tells a wonderful story, and the only condition is that every piece must have a heart on it. I'd love to find out a little bit more about that. So looking forward to finding out a bit more about all of those pieces. Oh, okay, sorry. Just need to make sure I've got my phone off so it doesn't sorry about that. Okay, now I know that your background is particularly interesting, so I think I might just start with asking you the question that I ask everyone who I chat with, and that is, so Amanda, what's your story?
What a great opener, Simone. Such a goodie. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this, especially the first global one. It's super exciting. So I always say I've got like this, I think whenever you've got like a big story or a series of stories, you kind of got to have something that can kind of wrap it up in, in a really quick, easy, consumable package. And I always make the joke about, have you seen Pulp Fiction? Right? So have you seen Pulp Fiction?
Yes, I have.
Right. Okay. So first of all, it was like a 2.5-hour marathon. Secondly, you're like, whoa, what just happened there? It was all over the place. And it took us a while, to kind of piece it all together, if we even did on our first one. And quite often we had to go back for seconds. And for me, my story is a bit like Pulp Fiction. It just cannot be explained in one quick little, tagline that just describes this whole mammoth of stories that sort of integrate together. So I guess where I like to start is a little bit like Pulp Fiction, somewhere in the middle. So it was like I was 16 years old, suspiciously got an envelope which I thought was loaded with cash from my grandmother. And I was like, why am I getting this early? She's finally given up on getting me ugly clothes that I don't want. And I tore it open in my excitement, and I see this congratulations across the top. And I'm like, I don't know any denominations with congratulations on them. Like, what is this? So I'm already not amused, right? Because it's not my, my much wanted cash, unless it was like, congratulations, this is the winning lotto ticket, which I didn't think that it was. It wasn't around in the 80s anyway. And I unfolded this thing to find that you are enrolled on a modeling course, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? I didn't want to be a model. I had no interest, hadn't even entered my mind. And my grandmother, basically was forcing me to go on something that I didn't want to go on. And she said, I said, what is this? And she said, it's a modeling course voucher. And I said, well, what am I meant to do with it? And she's like, well, you're meant to redeem it. I was like, then she started the sale. It'll be really good for you. And I was like sour Brussels sprouts, and I'm not interested in them either. So, and she's like, well, you know what? You're not going to get your clothes until you do. So she pulled her big guns, and I was like, right, we're all either motivated by clothes or food, predominantly. So music, of course, but next is usually between food and clothes. And hey, that's something we need. So off I went to go and psych all the other girls out. And all of a sudden, it was like this expectation to be amazing. And I was like, what is this? Everyone's trying hard. Everyone's, wants to be something. And so I just, sort of like, I don't care, whatever. So I turned up with my bad attitude, thinking I was, cooler than everybody else because I could spit halfway across the road. And then long story short, I had to go to a casting. And of course it was 85. You know, what was a casting? I didn't even know what that was. And they just said, wear nice underwear. And I'm like, I don't know why, but okay. So off I went to my casting. And there's these two guys sitting there at the, you know, the audition. And they said, well, you know, where's your portfolio? I was like, well, I don't have one. You know, like I've got no portfolio. I mean, I haven't even finished my modeling course yet. And, you know, and they said, well, we need to see your body. And it's like, well, you can see it. And they said, no, we need to see it. So I said, oh, okay. So I just took my clothes off in front of them, and I had nothing on but my lingerie, my high heels. I went, there's the front. And I turned around and went, there's the back. And they went, thank you. And next thing I got the job, Simone. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got the job. And it was worth $5,000 for my very first TV commercial. And I was like, oh my gosh, you can stick rockets up my bum. I don't care. Whatever you want to do to me, you can do whatever you like. For $5,000, you can have whatever you like. And all I had to do was dance around for the day. And that started this whole thing. And I thought, that will never happen again. That was just a fluke. That was luck. I mean, I was panicking because there were two Amanda Jordans at the time, which is my maiden name. And I was sure when I got there, they were going to see that they got the wrong one, you know, that I was the less beautiful one, right? Because the other one was actually really beautiful. And I never considered myself, you know, overly beautiful. And then I got a second one, except for this time I was prepared for the casting. And I rocked on up with, you know, a swimsuit slashed down to there and slashed up there on either side of my hips and made my legs look like, you know, 20,000 feet long. And I rocked it this time. I'd finished my course. I knew what I was doing. And I rocked on up, not thinking I would get it. And I got it again. And I was like, okay, this one's was only $1,500. And then $6,500 later, and for 2 days work, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to give up the pies, you know, because pies and modeling don't really go together, you know, like pies and modeling don't go together. And so I started working really hard, and I started making sacrifices. And I wasn't the tallest, skinniest, or prettiest, but I was the hardest working, or one of the hardest workings. I was kind. Nothing was a problem. Wherever they needed me to get dressed, I didn't care. And into the fashion industry, I started to weave myself. And then I kept on getting these jobs. And then eventually, you know, I got approached to do, you know, different work behind the scenes. So I started doing teaching modeling. At 19, I was teaching these other young girls how to model. I'm like, dudes, they were older than me, some of them, you know, and I couldn't believe I was already teaching people how to walk, how to pose, you know, like what's expected of you on castings and how to get jobs and blah, 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 how to look after your skin, rah, rah, rah. And then eventually I just weaved my way throughout the industry until I became a, you know, product and talent coordinator, doing all the photo shoot organizing and styling and choosing the models and the makeup artists and, you know, production and talent coordinator, and then backstage management at Fashion Week. And it just went on and on and on. And every time I got an opportunity, I grabbed it with both hands and then just kept on growing and say, right, well, how can I turn this into something more? And then how can I turn this into something more? And how can I turn this into something more? Well, eventually I had my son at 29 and a half, almost to the day. And it's when I gave birth to him and I held him in my arms for the first time, and I looked at him and I went, you know what? Stuff's got to change. Cycles have got to be broken. And you know, quite frankly, you know, it's got to change. And I've got to change, and I've got to make changes. And then I went about leaving my ex-husband when Isaac was 2. And then, but I got this call, you know, when I was, it was a little bit like when my waters broke. I didn't actually do it. And it was like, you will be a model agent. And I'm like, what? Where did that come from? You know, like it kind of came from nowhere. And it took me by surprise. I was like, oh, model agent. But again, where did you go to become a model agent? There was no school. There was no training. You couldn't go to a university to become a model agent. And I was like, okay, well, what do I need to do? It's like, well, you need to sell people. And so then I approached an agency, and they said, okay, well, if you're really good at this, this is what you do. We'll train you as much as we can. And I went with this little wee agency called June Daly Watkins. So originally from Australia.
Yes, we know them.
She was an icon, you know, in her time.
Absolutely.
It was all about, you know, our deportment and the way we presented ourselves, etc. So it was JDW New Zealand. And transpires I was really good at selling people, because I made 10 grand in my first couple of months in bonuses. And I was like, wow, this is something I should really grab and take care of. And then I started the process of self-education. So I then went and did an acting course, and I did a 10-week acting course, a 10-week improvisation course, and a 10-week presenters platform course, because I thought, how can I teach what I don't know? You know, I can't embody it. It's like I've been flying by the seat of my pants with TV commercials. That's awesome. But I wanted to lift the bar. And then 2 years later, I was headhunted, the kind of headhunting I like, by another agent. And I went over there and, you know, up the ante, better models. And by that stage, I was like, you know what? I want to own my own agency by the time I'm 40. And then the negative voices get in, like, how are you going to do that? You've just left your husband. You've got a child. You've got no money, you know, all these things. And I followed my heart, and then worked my butt off for another 2 years at that agency, and had like 7 models on the covers of magazines in the space of 6 weeks, which was incredible, you know, such an incredible achievement. And got some of the biggest bookings for models, not celebrities or talent, but models in New Zealand, you know, for a New Zealand company. And then I went and approached another agency, because I just kept on wanting to go bigger and higher, and went to another agency, which was 62 models. So these are the top agencies in New Zealand. The first one was, the second one was Klein that I went to, who's discovered the guy who owns Klein, or owned Klein. It was a guy called Kim who discovered Kylie Bax. And this is in the days when they were, you know, she was getting multi-million-dollar contracts, which was, you know, crazy, you know, in the early 2000s. And then I went across to 62 for 2.5 years, and then loved that and built a whole bunch of people there. No need to name drop, but, you know, it was fabulous until my grandmother died, the one that bought me the modeling course voucher. And she left all the inheritance that she had to her only son, left out of 3. And I was devastated, you know, because I was like, well, hold on a tick here, you know. It's not that she owed me anything, but I felt like I had an opportunity. And that's when I just went, you know what, no one's going to do this for me. I have to step out from the safety and the comfort of being employed and go for trying to start my own agency. And I got together with my ex-business partner, who I used to work with at Klein, and we borrowed a truck ton of money, and we started Red 11 Models, which was a really successful agency. And I gave my heart and soul into that for 8.5 years. Something really terrible happened at Red 11. It was something that went against all my values. 8.5 years later, my baby that I'd poured all my money, resources, effort, energy, love into, what was meant to be my legacy, was really kind of robbed, violated from me, because I wasn't ready to go. But I got pushed, you know, in so many ways, and certainly by higher powers, you know, whatever we want to call those, whether it be God or Buddha or Allah or Shiva or, you know, whatever, the universe, the cosmos. And I got that push again. And that's when I went out, you know, and went, I have to do something else. And after 8.5 years and 30 years in the industry, it was a devastating time, Simone. I went black and I went dark, because this is the part 2. And I just want to give your viewers a little bit of a warning, okay? Could cause triggers, but I'm really open and straight up. I promised you to be straight up, and what you see is what you get, and my authentic self. So this is the part when I came to that point. What do I do next? Because this is the thing. I left home and school at 15 with 2 years high school education. I didn't sit one day of what we call fifth form, but it's now called year 13. I was sexually abused for 7 years by 8 perpetrators between the age of 8 and 15. My first perpetrator used to beat the crap out of my mother. Legally, I'm not allowed to say what position he was within my family, which is crazy. So I was silenced. Used to beat the crap out of my mother, and she'd have to sleep with me to stop him from beating her. And of course, she never knew why until much later. My dad died at 35, but he left when I was 2 and my brother was 8 weeks old. He died of leukemia. He contracted it when he was 30. He was told he'd have, like, you know, several months to live. He managed to make his way through health quite a bit. He lasted for 5 years, but he lost out to it at 35. The day before he went to sign his will and change it from his ex-wife to me and my brother, his only children, he was so weak. The lawyer said, there you go, Mr. Walsh, there's your paperwork. He said, leave it there, I'll sign it tomorrow. And tomorrow never came. We weren't allowed to go to his funeral. We weren't allowed to cry. And our names aren't on his gravestone as if we haven't existed, because my mum used to use us as weapons against him. There's a whole lot more, but, you know, that basically is the crux and the guts of it. But the maternal abuse from my mum was perhaps the most damaging. That's the one that took the most work to work through, because she used to call me fat and ugly and a slut and all of these horrible names, and told me I was worthless and I would never amount to anything, and that boys, once they got to know my personality, they'd never stay with me, you know. And so by the time, I mean, as I said, that's just this much of the story, you know, a couple of suicide attempts, etc., etc. So here I was, you know, in my 40s, okay, about to get married to my wife of 16 years. I mean, she was my partner, to my wife. And I'm sitting there thinking, what do I do? You know, when you're at the top of your game, which I was in the fashion industry, I was the most powerful booker in the country. You know, if I touched you, you turned to gold, and I found talent and scalped talent, etc. What do you do when you've got 30 years of fashion locked under your belt, but you've also got this horrific past? And I was like, how do I integrate the both? Like, how do I put this traumatic childhood and this incredible fashion industry experience? I mean, I went, you know, I hung out with Seal in Mexico, you know, and I went to Vegas and Paris Hilton's auntie's Maserati with her, you know, and drinking champagne out of the back of her fridge out of a Maserati. I didn't know that Maseratis had fridges. I've been to Turkey. I've been, you know, traveling all around the world, you know, placing models and looking for models. I had this incredible life. So how could I integrate what I knew, my knowledge and experience, along with my knowledge, what I really knew as a woman, as a person, as a human, as a spirit? You know, my mum, you know, I think one of the hardest stories, and this is one that's really hard for people to take, but she stripped me naked to my socks at 15 and made me get down on my knees, bend over the bed, and she whipped me with the jug cord. And that was the last time I thought, that's the last time you ever lay your hands on me. And it was. I left home and school, you know, a few short weeks later, 2 weeks, I think it was, with $20 in my pocket and the clothes on my back. So that's when it was a really interesting time. And, you know, that's where I can sort of like kind of go, okay, and we can talk about where I'm going now, a little bit later, if you like. So with regards to Bridge the Gap and how that came about.
Yeah. So there's obviously, you were saying that there was that moment in time that you went, well, how do I integrate those pieces of myself? How do I bring them all back into some kind of, and it's hardly a balance, is it? It's a balancing act maybe, but how do you bring those incredibly disparate pieces of yourself, some of which you're still working through to heal, and some of which, or that, you know, if you don't always want to bring out to the light of day. So what did you do in that time that you found really helpful to be able to do that? Because I know that there are women and men who will be watching this, who'll be going, well, what could I do? Because I'm going through some kind of a struggle like that myself right now. So what can I do? So what helped you?
That's a really good question. And what I want to say before I answer that question is that I want to say that pain is pain, you know, because quite often people go, oh, well, that didn't happen to me, so I can't even possibly, you know, think about how I could get out of my little thing, and they feel insignificant. And what I really want to say is I have a beautiful analogy that I use with every single person that I work with. And I work with women of all ages and kids of all ages, but predominantly my focus is on teenagers because they're the hardest ones for most people to manage, and are a piece of cake and a walk in the park for me. And I always would say pain is pain. So let's say, you know, I fell off a motorbike, right, in a motorcycle accident, and I broke my arm, and we'll call that sexual abuse. And we'll say that you jumped around on a trampoline and you tripped over and you broke your arm, and we'll call it, what would you like to call it? Domestic violence or?
Yes, okay.
Domestic violence. And let's say Sue Lester, who's watching, she fell out of a tree, okay? She fell out of a tree when she was climbing the tree, and she broke her arm, right, as well, and we'll call that poverty. And then we'll say Ellie, who was, she was riding her bicycle just quite innocently, and some guy knocked her off her bike, and then she broke her arm, and we'll call that bullying. Okay, so there's all these different, you know, variants of the same sort of thing, right? Now, first of all, we can't compare our pain. Okay, whether it's our husband left us or our wife left us, or our children are being defiant and we've lost control of them, whether it's we've got empty nest syndrome and we're beside ourselves, whether we're suffering, menopause, or the fact that we can't have children, whatever's happening in our world, it causes us pain. And we can't compare our pain to another person's pain. But the thing is, the same thing needs to happen. We all need to go to the doctor. We all need to get it checked. We all need to get it realigned. We need to get a cast, and then we need to wait for 6 weeks, and it'll all get itchy for all of us. We'll stick knitting needles down it, right? And then eventually the cast will come off, and now this arm is weaker than that arm, right? And we have to strengthen it back up again. Okay, I just happened to break my arms, my legs, my shoulders, my collarbones. Like I feel like I broke every bone in my body. And so that's why for me, it's really important that your viewers really understand that their pain is relevant. And so the thing is, we all need the same thing to heal ourselves, right? And for me, the big thing that I did is I engaged a really amazing therapist. So because I just blocked my mother, right? Because I just remembered there's more stories that are
of course.
I know, because my grandmother lost 2 sons out of 3. The first one was 13 and was killed he was actually hit off his bicycle right outside their house by a drunk driver. And then the only son that was left had 1 child, and she was killed in a drunk driving accident. Only the drunk driver survived. The other 2 passengers died. So we've been littered with all this tragedy. And the reason that's so important for the story is that that's a lot of stuff to get through. It's a lot of stuff to get through. So I ate, around about 7 therapists for breakfast. I just couldn't find anyone that could actually wrangle me, right, or handle me. And really what I needed was a horse whisperer. I call it an Amanda whisperer. I needed someone that could believe in me, and stick with me no matter how ugly I got. And so for me, one of the biggest things is I got a really good psychotherapist, because mine was about my past, right? I needed heal that, because there was no way forward until I did. The second thing that I did is I made the necessary sacrifices. So the sacrifices, what I find in my work now with a lot of incarcerated young people in particular, and also when on probation, all the best intentions, but when it comes to the freedom, they do not have the discipline. They do not have the discipline. They will not make the sacrifice to make the changes. They don't want the changes enough, right? And that's something that you've got to do. You've got to commit. You've got to put your intention of what you want out to the world, and then you've got to make it, believe it inside of you, and do everything in your power to attract what you want. I wanted to be healed, so I had to get off the drugs. So no drugs after 22, when I was 22 years old, right? So I didn't ever get off the drugs. I had to limit my alcohol, and at one stage, it's certainly when I had Isaac, I gave up alcohol for about 2 years, because you can't be in clarity. And I love my wine, I love my gin and all that kind of stuff. But again, right now I'm off the alcohol, and I'm off the sugar, and I'm off the coffee, and I pretty much stick to veganism, although I'm just switching to pescatarian now. I make the discipline and the sacrifices to make the changes, because the changes aren't going to happen. You have to make them change. You have to send it out to the universe about what you want. Then the universe can start to shift things around to give you what you need. So I found a really good therapist, and I made those sacrifices, and I got myself really clear, in my head. I had to go without alcohol, and I had to go without bad food. I had to exercise. I had to drag my butt out of bed when I was so black. All I wanted to do was cry. I at one stage, I had 10 hours sleep over a 5-day period. I was so dark, every single day. And it was just full of all of these moments of wanting to leave the planet. I was like, this, what? You got me. You got me. This is too hard for me. I can't handle this. This is, and I'm like, you've got these affirmations, you only get given what you can handle. And it's like, well, you know what? You're pushing me to my bloody limit. And it's like, it's really important also, to find really good mentors who believe in you, just like my grandmother did. I mean, imagine if that was Cash Simone, I would have blown it.
Well, exactly. And you would never have had, well, I don't know, maybe the experiences would have landed in your lap in a different way. Maybe you would have had to go searching for them. But yes, certainly your grandmother gave you an incredible gift in that congratulations, you have won, or certificate. But it's fascinating, isn't it, how those kind of turning points show up in our lives to teach us things and to help us to see where we're going off track. And obviously you've had some incredible turning points in your life that you've shared a couple of them about your mum and also about your grandmother. Were there other significant turning points that helped direct you to the work that you are doing now? And just before you answer that, I'm going to say something very strange. Are you able to take your glasses off? Because they're reflecting the screen, and we can't see your eyes.
I can see you, but that's okay. I can see you, but I can not sort of see too much else, but that's okay.
No, that's okay. As long as you can kind of see the screen, that's the main thing. Only because it's reflecting the screen back, and so we don't see your beautiful eyes. And it makes such a difference. All right. So other turning points that were significant, well, I think all turning points are significant because they put us in a different state, don't they? They put us into a different, like it could be a complete and utter chaotic world. But what other turning points were significant for you that really helped shape where you are and the kind of work you're doing now?
Yes, because it was a really big one when I left Red 11, so the first turning point was when I left home and school, because that was massive. I mean, 15 years old, I still can't believe I did it myself. And then the next turning point was leaving Craig, my ex-husband. He's a perfectly good man, but there were just things, between us, and after 10 years together. So that was a big turning point because it was like going into a model agency. And the thing is, you've got to almost, want something.
Talking about her life.
And then commit to it before you can turn it into.
Hear this. She's so inspiring. It's not even funny.
Oh, that's really cute. Who's that?
Thank you, but I'm just going to mute you. Thank you, Ria.
Oh, that's Ria. I love her. I love her. She's one of my girls.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
It's a major turning point as well, right? Is that right? What do I do with my life now? But the really big one was the Red 11. After finishing Red 11, that was a massive turning point because I just felt like everything was taken away. All my whole life was kind of stripped from me, and all my freedom was stripped from me. My financial freedom, my hopes, my dreams, my legacy that I had created, and I was like, wow, I'm not even on my father's gravestone, and now my legacy's been ripped away from me. It's not what I wanted. And that's the thing, is like sometimes when those kind of things happen, you've got to go back to your past. Like, what did I love doing as a girl? I loved sewing, and I took sewing and I took art, and I was really good at English, so I loved writing and creating stories. And then, of course, I remember once, for example, doing an English exam, right, or an English, a project thing that we had to do, essay, and I was like, oh, that actually sounds a bit weak, so I'm going to draw this really amazing picture. And I decided to do pictures and words, and I bloody well got away with it.
Well done you, yes.
And I don't think I would have without the pictures and words. So I thought about things like that. It's almost like you take this helicopter view and look over your life. And one exercise that I did that I would thoroughly recommend is I started swimming. Okay. And it's not so much like I recommend the swimming, although I do. But what I did is each year I went up the pool and thought about all the terrible things that happened at 8. And then I went back down the pole and what the good things that came out of those terrible things were. Right, then up the pool at 9, the terrible things, and the good things that came out from that. And up the pool at 10, and off it went until I was exhausted because it was too long to get to my 40s. But I had to do that in several lots, right? And that was a really big turning point, was actually like the helicopter view, the dragonfly, I like to call it the dragonfly view over your life and the turning points. And you get these little pegs, these little beacons. And then if you actually get the string and just go, right, how can I link these up? A little bit like what we used to do with, the boxes game. Yep. Right. So we try and link those up and work out how to link those up. And so I was like, right, what was I good at? Okay. What was I good at? And then it's like, well, what do I want? Okay. And then it started becoming, how will it serve? Okay. And that was a really interesting question to ask myself. And then the big one that I just used again the other day, and I often use with people that I work with, I go, if you won lotto, would you be doing what you're doing? Right? And it's like, that's a really good question to ask yourself. Like, if you won lotto, would you be doing what you're doing? The answer for me is yes. So I looked into my past, and all I knew is, it's like, I did not have that childhood for nothing. I did not suffer it for nothing. It will not be for no reason and hold no value. How do I make that valuable? And I remember when I started telling my story, my mum died in 2012 and I hadn't spoken to her since 2004 because I had to get rid of her out of my life. She was bad for my mental health, you know, and as I said, I made sacrifices, and you know, there was a really crucial time where I just remember thinking, how do I integrate this, right? I did not get given a voice like this to be silent. Yes, I did not get given a beauty like this. And I know it's beauty. I'm going to own it. I got paid for it and I still do. You know, it's like that old saying, you know, that people that have a beautiful smile open up doors so much more you know, easier. I used to pout like anything as a model, like this, and now I just look like a mean old lady if I do that. Now it's like smiling, you know, it's just so much more valuable. So how could I use my beauty for good? How could I use it to serve? And it's like, when you actually start to think about how you can use what you've been through, what you know for certain, you know, because you only know what you know. How can I use that to serve? And that's when the answer came. And that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I need to start Bridge the Gap Project, right? I need to help young people who aren't necessarily beauty privileged, right? To get access to people like me who can absolutely change and transform their lives, you know? So how do I do that? And then I set my intentions. You know, we were talking about this today and I'm excited to talk about that. You know, it's a little bit like when I went, I want to own my own agency. There was nothing. There's every reason in the world that I should never have owned my own agency, but I did, right? And I co-founded it from the ground up. So it wasn't like something I just bought that was already built. We built that baby, right, from the ground, like absolutely through all the pain and torture, into a multi-million-dollar, you know, business that had models, you know, going around the world doing Chanel and Karl Lagerfeld and Yves Saint Laurent and Dior and everything. You know, so it's getting yourself ready before the opportunity arrives.
Yes,
right?
and we did speak about that this morning.
Yeah.
We talked about the idea of pre-preparation. So basically, I suppose getting all your ducks in a row, really, isn't it? About making sure that you put out the order to the universe, that you actually make sure that you are set up in such a way that when the opportunities arrive, you can actually take advantage of them. Because and you also talked about, you know, finding those opportunities in the chaos that was happening. So like the demise of Red 11, or rather you're being pushed out of Red 11, you know, the chaotic environment that must have been for you, where you just didn't know, you know, it can't have been a very
from my bubble, quite frankly. I did.
Yeah. Like,
you know, 30 years in the business as the queen. What do you do?
Yeah. And where do you find that strength to say, okay, well, how can I serve? And I love that that concept of, you know, finding all of the bits, you know, finding what it is that you're passionate about. You know, when I was growing up, I was passionate about creating little musical plays and things for my family, and I would cast everybody, and all of, you know, the other kids had to all be in it as well, and I would tell them what song that they should sing, and we'd choreograph little dances to them, and then, you know, terrorize my parents with the end result.
That's so cute. We'd love to see that.
But I think, you know, a lot of kids do that as a form of creative play. But I suppose if I look back at that certainly would provide some very obvious triggers or suggestions for what I might do with my work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just talk a little bit about that pre-preparation that we have spoken about briefly, and what you need to do to kind of get you on that path to whatever success or fulfillment looks like for you.
And that's, again, I just love your questions. They're such good questions. First of all, I've got two things. So Abe Lincoln said, you know, give me 6 hours to chop a tree and I'll spend 5 hours sharpening my axe. I love
Great quote. Love it.
I love that one. Do I follow it all the time? No.
Well, hey, we're not quite superhuman.
And when I find myself getting distracted, I'm like, hold on a tick. What are you doing? Are you chopping at a tree with a blunt axe? You know, you're better off sharpening your axe, Bets. Sharpen your axe, you know? So that's another really good one. And I love what you said before about putting your order in. So again, another analogy I have, because it's really great for communication for people to understand. The universal pizza shop, I call it. So let's say we both go to the universal pizza shop, and let's say I know what I want, right? And I'm behind you, okay? And you're first, right? And so you go up and they go, hello there, Simone, what would you like tonight? And you go, oh gee, there's so much choice. And like the guy's kind of waiting, and it's like, and he goes, okay, hold on. Do you know what you want? It's like, no, well, I don't want anchovies, okay? Because I love them, but I don't want anchovies, right? So you go, okay, well, we won't put anchovies on your pizza then, but what do you want? It's like, oh my gosh, okay, well, I don't want the thick crust because I'm on a bit of a diet, you know, okay, maybe she's in the pizza shop in the first place, but that's okay.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Right? So it's like, I want to go to pizza. So, you know, you're sitting there dithering and dithering. Eventually, the guy's going to get annoyed with you, isn't he? And he's going to go, look, you know what? Why don't you go and make a decision over here? What about you? Can I help you, miss? Yes, please. I would like, you know, the thin base with salmon and loads of anchovies and capers and da-da-da-da and a bunch of rocket, please. Hold the sauce to the side. Thank you very much. Right now, as soon as I've done that, what does he do? He takes my order. I pay, don't I? I have to pay in some way. Obviously, the pizza shop, if we're talking about literally, we have to pay with money. Yep. But the universal pizza shop does not understand money. Right? It doesn't. It understands intention. It understands feeling. Right? I've already imagined, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've already eaten that pizza in my mind. Okay, so I'm on it. Right? That's exactly what I want, and I place my order. In the meantime, you're still dilly-dallying around. Okay, my pizza gets delivered to me. I go off a happy person. I go off and eat my pizza, feel real good about it. I go to bed guilt-free, and I sleep like a log. And then the next day, I go, right, what do I want today? Right? So that's, I think, a really important one. I think if we find ourselves procrastinating and dilly-dallying, which is such an easy thing for us to fall into, like, let's go, rightio, okay. First of all, what do I want? What do I want today? Okay, let's just say what's something I want today, and what do I want for next week, and what do I want for next month, and what do I want for next year? You know, so it's really important. So I really loved how you said that. And the pre-prep thing, and I'll tell you a really great story, and it's really in relation to you because I'm a massive fan. I think every single human should do acting courses. I really, really do. Like, I'm not saying it, you know, to blow smoke up your bum, right? I'm saying it because it's the best form of therapy, okay? A lot of people can't handle the jandle when it comes to therapy, right? They just, and my kids certainly can't. They just go, nah, too confronting, can't deal with it. Yeah. And I think when you go to acting, you get going to acting classes, for example, you get to do things through observation, right? So we all get given the same brief, okay? So here's the brief, right? And this is your character that you're playing in this particular role, in this particular play, or whatever it might be, or skit or mime. And it's like, this is your brief, okay? So then what we do is we get our brief and we interpret it the way that we know, okay, that brief. So we go, rightio, okay, well, that's Shakespeare. And because I only know Shakespeare is like, to be or not to be, this is the question. So, right? And someone else comes along and goes, you know what, dude, to be or not to be, this is the question, right? So everyone's going to interpret it differently, and quite often we get influenced by the way that other people interpret. And then so first of all, you get to see how other people see it, which is seeing human behavior, you know, seeing the different personality types in the world. Because when you understand personality types, you will have a way more peaceful life, right? Because you kind of go, oh, it's okay, you know, I'm a little bit of a tank, but they are a bit of a bazooka, okay? Or they're a sniper. They'll smile to your face and like bang, 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 and you'll never know that they've shot you until you're dead, right? So you've got to understand what the different characters are around you. And then the next part is observation. So you get to remove yourself emotionally from something. So like, let's say we're doing a scene and you're my mum and I'm me, you know, I'm going to be right in it, aren't I? I'm going to be up to my eyeballs. And even though you've got nothing to do with my mum, you've never met her, when you start acting out what you think my mum was like, according to what I told you, I'm going to react and be triggered in such a way.
Absolutely.
If I actually watch and stand back, and then two characters are playing this part, and it's they don't know about my history, and then they act the parts out, I'm able to then look at it in an observational viewpoint, you know, from both my mother's perspective as well as mine. Right, which of course for many years until I went to therapy, I had no idea, and I didn't give a crap about my mother's perspective. So you know, with acting, for example, I think it's an invaluable tool. It really is, you know, which is why I'm so supportive of what you do and your work, because I think every human should actually do it. I think they should do it at a corporate level to have a better understanding from other people's perspectives, and it's a therapeutic thing. So I, for example, out of the blue one day went, oh, I you know what? I want to be on TV. I want to do a show, but I don't want to do a show. So I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I didn't want. I want to do a show that's where I'm my authentic self. I can be whatever I want. I can say whatever I like and fly by the seat of my pants. I don't want it to be too scripted. I'm happy to do what I'm told, but only to a degree, as long as it doesn't, you know, compromise my brain.
And you still got work?
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. I seriously popped up to the pizza shop, Simone. And so that's what I did. And I thought, right, well, what do I need to do, right, to be ready for that? Like, what if the opportunity comes along? Right? Because I'm pretty good at manifesting. So what if the opportunity comes along and if I'm not ready? Well, that's stupid. That's like, you know, that's like kind of never having driven before. And then, you know, all of a sudden my grandmother bought me a car, but I can't drive it, right? Why wait and go, oh my gosh, I've got the car. By the time I've got the car, you miss the opportunities. Opportunities are like floating $20 bills in the wind. They won't turn into anything. Like $20 is awesome to get, you know, like if it's floating in the wind. And actually I found a $20 bill floated in the wind right in front of me in the middle of K Road once. I couldn't believe, I was like, wow, I manifested that. And it's awesome, but it's only $20. So, you know, what I did is I bought 2 chapsticks with it. And I bought a lotto ticket. And I thought, well, if I don't win the lotto ticket, I still got the chapsticks to last for ages, right?
I love it. I love your thinking.
You're right. So I took, and so 2 chapsticks. So I turned that opportunity into something more. And the same with this TV thing. So I wanted to do this. I thought, right, I'm going to get ready. So I did that 10-week acting course, the 10-week improvisation course, and the 10-week actors platform course. And guess what happened? I got an audition.
Yeah, of course.
I got the job, right? I got the role, and it was like it was a gay show, which I was really excited about because I wanted to smash perceptions of what gay people looked like. And it was 10 weeks, 10 episodes, which was awesome because I sort of had my fix and went, yeah, well, actually, I don't really want to be on television after all. But I had the experience of it. And it was the same when I wanted to have Isaac. I was like, right, well, I want to have this child. We won a trip to Italy in March 1996. I wanted to have a child on the 7th of November, which was my dead father's birthday, or the 10th of November the following year, which is my grandmother's birthday, and on February the 14th, which is Valentine's Day. Don't ever get married on Valentine's Day. You only get one present. Right?
Oh, right.
You know, I did all the business, and my son arrived on the 6th of November, but I had to give up smoking first, right? I gave up the 30 cigarettes a day. I started eating healthily. I gave up the alcohol to get my body ready for the opportunity. There was no guarantee it was going to come. There was no guarantee that I was going to find somebody that would invest in me and with me to create Red 11. And, you know, there was no guarantee that I was going to get an audition for a TV show. I mean, they're like hen's teeth, right? So it was all getting myself prepared before I got to the starting gate. You know,
and is that how you find those opportunities too, where we were talking earlier? You find those opportunities in the chaos because you do actually prepare yourself for what might show up, even if you don't always have, you know, to use your analogy of the pizza shop, even if you think, okay, I know that I want thin crust and I know that, but I'm not quite sure what the rest is. You know, there must be times where you have to go with your gut instinct, because you don't always know exactly what the whole picture is going to be, because, you know, things often show up, don't they, in a very different way to what you expect.
Oh my gosh.
Would you agree?
Oh my gosh, you have so hit the nail on the head, Simone. You know, I love that song. It's going to be at my funeral. You can't always get what you want, but if you try to try, you'll find to get what you need. And the other thing that happens in support of that, you have just hit the nail on the head, right? It is always bigger than what you believe it could be. Okay?
Oh, totally
so
agree.
Smallness,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, with our minds.
Yeah.
It's like even with how I started Heartspeak and stuff, all I wanted to do was raise money, right?
Mm.
And I totally didn't account for the fact that it would sort of take off on a global scale. And people overseas were being more supportive of me and the work than people in New Zealand. Because I think we're spoiled in New Zealand, and I think, quite often you just don't know how it's going to come, but that's not your job. So I always sort of like to say, like Wonder Woman, right? But instead of like the truth lasso, it's the desire lasso, it's the intentions lasso, and it's the commitment lasso. So what I did, like, for example, I was like, oh wow, I was working with Amy Jean Creative, who makes amazing stuff out of recyclable leather. And she was like, oh, have you ever seen anything in pink leather? And I said, okay, I'm going to put it out there. So I went, poof, and I just threw this pink leather thing, and from here, threw it to the universe. And then, like the clay shooting, I got my gold lasso, because gold is vibrational, it's energetic, and it attracts to it. And I just went, and I just whipped it around this pink leather thing, which still wasn't in my existence. And I went like this, and then you just chop it, right? And then you give it to the universe, and it's spinning, okay? And you give that to the universe. I swear to you, 2 weeks later, this woman called Sarah, I had a whole bunch of stuff for her, and I was helping her, right? I was giving her some old clothes because she needed to sell some clothes. And I said, look, if you see any amazing embroidery, keep an eye out for me. I rocked up, and she goes, oh, I found something for you I thought that you might like. And I said, oh, what is it? She took me into the shed, and she opens up the door, and it's like light was like, oh, coming in. Right? And I was like, what's going to be in there? Right? I just couldn't believe it. It was like a grail or something. And there was a full-length matrix-style pink leather coat. No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How amazing.
Yeah.
And full length, even, like, some people want to go on a bomber jacket.
Yeah. I know, right? I was just thinking a little top. Well, I did get a little top to start with. I got a little pink top, and I was like, I was so stoked with that because it was beautiful soft leather. It was a pink long sleeve top, and I'm like, sweet, but you can only get so much out of that. But a whole pink leather jacket, are you kidding? So it's almost like, because the manifestation had happened, I was like, well, that's good enough. You see, and the universe is going, oh no, we've got more planned for you, sister, right? And I want to use that story as a really good example, because that is the weirdest thing to want to try and manifest.
Yeah, but also it just speaks so much to that whole thing of playing small, and the fact that we often do settle. And I know for myself as well, being quite honest about that, it's been something that I've done for a long time, no more. But now, like in the past, I would think, oh, like this much and no further. But when you really step into that space of going, you know what, I'm actually really good at what I do. You're brilliant at what you do. When you own that, when you actually say, this is actually my area of brilliance, this is my area where I absolutely shine, and I need to be able to share that. I need to share that in service, as you put it so beautifully, in service to others. And I think once we actually do that, then the universe does open up so many doors and make so many things become possible for us, because we have chosen to believe in ourselves and put ourselves out there and to be visible. How often do we hide?
I love you. Yes.
And I know that, visibility is such a big piece too with the work that you're doing with both Bridge the Gap and Heartspeak. So can you share a little bit now and maybe show us some examples of those amazing works that you create? Because they are, they're like living, breathing art, and that, I cannot wait for my own piece. I can't wait
to make it.
Oh my God. So talk to me about, or talk to myself and everyone who's listening about Heartspeak and the beauty that is.
Yes, this is my favorite part. So my hair stands up on end, even thinking about it. So this was the latest major turning point for me. So I started a charitable trust. Crazy, like, oh my gosh, I don't even know why I did it, because I had to do the work to raise funds to do the work. It's a terrible business model. And it's been a really hard road. Now, again, we're going to do a truth bomb here. I decided I was going to leave the planet. My 49th birthday, which was last May, not the May gone, but the one before, was going to be my last birthday. I'd had enough because I had built Bridge the Gap, and it was really hard. And I put the intention out there. I wanted to work in the prison. Boom! This woman turns up out of the prison, from the prison, and she loved my work. And I'm like, wow. And the next thing, I'm doing a 10-week youth development course in the prison. And I'm like, wow, how did I go from a model agent to that? And then I wanted to work with incarcerated youth, baby prisoners. So I wanted to work in the youth justice system and get them before they go to prison. And boom, Sharon Tom, the managing director of Oranga Tamariki, which was Child, Youth and Family Services for Auckland, saw me speak, heard me speak and saw me at L'Oreal Face Your Future, which is an event with 50 young people each year. And L'Oreal do this incredible thing to gift to kids in care. And then, next minute I'm at the office and boom, I'm doing, workshops and transformational photo shoots, etc. And, and then I wanted to work in care and protection. I mean, these kids have stories like mine, some of them worse and some not as bad, but they're all elements, which is why I share my story so broadly and openly, because it allows me to capture the hearts of people. There's one thing to capture the eyeballs, the other cheerleaders. There's another thing to capture the minds, but it's quite something else to capture the heart. Absolutely. And I was like, how do I capture people's hearts? How do I do it? And how do you talk about sexual abuse? How do you talk about getting hidings and being smacked around and watching your dog being flung across the room? How do you talk about that stuff with people going, oh no, I kind of want to help you, but it's just too much, And so I saw this major problem. But in the meantime, I went into this really, what I call a liquid space, black as black as black. I have never been so black in my life, and my goodness, have I been black at times. And it was so dark and so crippling and so I just felt like I felt like I was in the back of a cave, like Gollum, this insipid thing that didn't see the light, couldn't see the light. And the light was so distant, I just didn't care. And I just wanted to go, and it's like, I was just so exhausted. I'm just like, dude, I've served, I've done a great job. I have helped so many people. I've built bank accounts and companies and, charities and all sorts of things. I've loaned my weight everywhere and I've got nothing left. So I was in my blackest time. And then the challenge of trying to raise funds, like, how do you do that? People want to help you, but they can only help you in the spare time. Who has spare time in this day and time? No one I know, no one I work with, except for those guys that are incarcerated and have spare time. And so then one day, I just literally, when I just thought, I can't take any more. I'm so black and I'm so dark. I'm struggling to get myself out of bed. I can't sleep. I'm losing weight, like nothing, not eating, doing it in the worst possible way. It was like a total, I was squeezed so hard. And being at the back of the cave, it's in those times when the pressure gets to you so much, and then all of a sudden it crushes that outside rock away, and hey presto, there was a gem. There was a diamond. And the diamond for me is I literally woke up bolt upright one day and went, I've got it. I'm going to get secondhand and pre-loved jackets and things, and I'm going to embellish them, and these kids can pour their stories into these jackets and they can speak without opening their mouth.